Hi, I'm Arianna Lasha, and this is Welcome Home Doggy, a show where we talk about creating a better quality of life for all dogs. Today, I'll be talking with Megan Billingsley, founder of Primed Instincts. So stay with us, we'll be right back. Hey Megan, how are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Of course.
And we were so glad to find out that you're actually good friends with one of our previous guests, Aaron Fisher of Atlanta Rescue Dog Cafe.
Yes, Aaron is an awesome guy. I used to volunteer with him. We'll still do.
Yeah, shout out Aaron. So why don't we go ahead and take it from the top. Tell me, what is Primed Instincts?
Primed Instincts is a dog training business that I started last year. I wanted to do something that I truly enjoyed doing, and I've been doing it for about 10 years for other people, kind of gathering a lot of info and knowledge, and it just happened that quarantine kind of pushed me into it, and here we are today.
So talk about a silver lining. You said this started about a year ago around this time?
Yeah, almost about a year ago, right as the pandemic was starting. We did a lot of research and got into logistics, started the website, got a few yard signs, and bam, people started calling me about their new pandemic puppies that they got because they were home alone and they needed some loving, and kind of took off from there. Started with puppies, moved on to people referring out to others in the community, in the East Atlanta community. Started working in Buckhead, started going, all over inside the perimeter of Atlanta with puppies, newly rescued dogs that people have had for a while, they needed to work on because now they're home and realize that these behaviors are not really working out for them. And so that's what happened.
You're going to need to coin that term, pandemic puppies, and get them all trained. So talk about the day-to-day of the training that you do for these pandemic puppies.
So pandemic puppies, they always start with my Puppy Basics course. And that's about 4 one-hour lessons for 4 consecutive weeks. And during this time, we learn the 4 pillars of commands that I think are most important. Sit, stay, where if I put you in a sit or a down, you have to stay until you were released. This helps with willpower. Mm-hmm. Hand targeting, which helps with heel, which is a really good leash training tool, because a lot of puppies just, when they're on a leash, they're looking around, what do I focus on? So the hand targeting kind of brings them back to focus. Leave it, most important puppy command out there, because you don't want them eating stuff they shouldn't, because this is how puppies get into trouble. Mm-hmm. And then come when called, which I think is also a very important safety command for dogs to know. We always start with inside first. So with the first couple lessons, we start inside to lessen the amount of distractions. So the puppy learns what these commands mean. Then we move outside. We add the distraction, see if they can handle it. Cars, birds, squirrels, other dogs. Can the puppy handle all these distractions? And hopefully, if the owner did their homework for the first couple of weeks, the puppy will do well. So we'll do a couple lessons outside, couple lessons inside, and then that usually is my Puppy Basics course. Then after that, they can move on to an intermediate course where they get to be in a group class with other older puppies and build on these foundations that we have already learned.
Okay. And so when you begin, do you have like a facility where you train these puppies?
No, so I go to people's houses because I want to see everyone in their natural environment. Mm-hmm. So I'll go to their house, we'll do the training there, obviously COVID prepped, and then we'll move outdoors. Atlanta has a lot of great places to work on stuff. There's a lot of great parks, hiking trails to work on all of this, mm-hmm. Outdoor seating, patios, because you want them to experience things in real life. And so that's what I base my training off of.
Okay, so when you mention you're in homes, does that mean that the owners have to be there with their pets?
Oh, yes. Owners need to be there. They need to understand the training. I'm essentially training the owner.
You're teaching them more than you're teaching the dogs.
The dogs are just looking to us for guidance. Like, we're being their leaders. And so the person has to understand what these commands mean and how their puppy learns. Some puppies learn different from others. That's why I always ask about the breed of the puppy. How much do you know about this breed? Terriers learn differently than shepherds. Shepherds learn different than huskies. Like, it's all different. So yes, the owner has to be present because they're going to be the one training the dog when I'm not there. And that's the most important thing. They get homework.
Do they always pass their homework?
Usually.
Okay.
If they're really focused and willing and putting in the commitment, yes, they usually do pretty well with their homework. And every once in a while we need to do a refresher, but most of the time.
So how do you know when a dog is done? Like, how do you know when they mastered their course, they're ready to go out and be a perfect citizen in the world?
There's never going to be that perfect dog.
Right.
I mean, I like to think that mine would be, but they're not. There's always something to work on. But I think if a dog can listen to you and focus on you when you ask them to, I think the dog is ready to be out in the midst of the real world. But it's going to take a lot of refreshing courses and training, and it's a constant thing, a dog. Like, this is a commitment.
Right.
And everything can be new. You move to a new house. You need to set new boundaries. You need to do new protocols with them. They meet somebody that you're dating. They're going to have to learn how to be around that person. That person might have a dog that they need to be introduced to. You have a baby.
Right.
Like, you need to introduce them to the baby. How is that going to work out? So there's always something new, always something that the dog can be learning. So dog is never done. It's just how much can you put into your dog to make their life better for you, with you. Because your relationship with your dog is the most important. Not society's relationship, your relationship.
So dogs are like us. We never stop learning, right?
We never stop learning.
So it's just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so typically when we talk about training, we always have puppies in mind. But do you train older dogs as well?
I do. I do like older dogs. I do a lot of newly rescued dogs. So people have been contacting me because when the shelters, emptied during the pandemic, everyone had these newly rescued dogs, and they ranged in age from puppy to senior. We actually took in a foster husky who was 8 years old, and we had to kind of rehabilitate him in a sense. But yeah, people are getting these newly rescued dogs, and they don't quite understand that the dog has to decompress from coming out of a shelter, and then they need to learn a new routine, and then their personality starts to come out. The personality usually doesn't come out until about 3 months in, I want to say. But you can start teaching them boundaries, what you're expecting of them. I do work with like fearful, shy, nervous dogs. I don't work with bite cases. So if there's a bite case, I can refer that out. But usually it's just a nervous dog trying to get acclimated to their new home, their new environment. And that's where we build that bond. I think building a bond with the dog is one of the hardest things to do, but it's also the most fulfilling. But it does take time, especially with these rescue dogs, depending on how long it's been since they've had, a loving, committed owner. So that takes a bit.
Is it harder training an older or a rescue dog?
Sometimes, depends on the behavior they may have acquired over the past few years. Like if they're an 8-year-old dog and they've been barking at dogs through a window for 8 years, that's going to take some time to scale back and kind of break down and replace it with a better behavior. It's not going to be immediate. So it really just depends on the age of the dog, how bad the issue is, and then how much commitment the owner is willing to put into.
Would you say that behavior training is something that's necessary for all dogs, no matter what age?
No matter what age. And you can start as early as you can, especially with puppies. Start teaching them boundaries, discipline, crate training, potty training, all of that. Socialization is huge. Take them everywhere once they're properly vaccinated, because then they get exposed to the world and they won't be as fearful when they get older. Yeah, it's the best thing.
Do you have any cases or memorable stories of like a particular dog?
There was a dog that we took out of the shelter in Austin when I worked in Austin, Texas. He was a bite case. He'd bitten 2 people. He was young though. He was about 1.5 years, and so very impressionable still has a whole life ahead of him. So I took him in as a foster, and I socialized him. I put him through basics course at the center that I worked for, put him through intermediate course, and then eventually put him through a Canine Good Citizen course. And he got adopted out, you know, with them knowing that he had a bite case, but because he'd been through training with me and been properly socialized, he is now living the high life with one of my good friends from Austin, being a photographer's dog, traveling, meeting new people. He's so happy now.
And it's all because of you, right?
It's all because of me. No. It's everyone around that was able to help.
Right.
My roommate helped. My dog at the time helped to socialize him. And his potential owner who adopted him also would help and walk with me and get him used to men because he's a little fearful of men. And eventually they built a bond and he got adopted.
Yeah. Well, you have all of these success stories for dogs. Do you train any other animals, people that are dealing with cats or?
No, I don't do cats. I used to do big cats.
Okay.
But that was many, many years ago during grad school. So I understand, but cats just, it's not as much of a fulfilling reward as dogs are. Cats, you just teach not to be a jerk,
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
Not to be mean.
Don't push that off the table,
Right.
please. Yeah.
Would you mind telling us about your training philosophy?
Sure. So I experienced a lot of stuff in the past 10 years. I worked with big cats, doing operant conditioning. I worked with sled dogs, where I learned about group dynamics and the hierarchy, alpha, beta, delta, all of that. I learned about behavioral modification. I learned about positive reinforcement. So all of that kind of combined, I've built my own philosophy of positive reinforcement, which is rewarding the bad, ignoring the good, and positive and negative consequences. I also like to utilize meal training and mental stimulation into most of my training. The dog needs to have both physical and mental stimulation to truly wear them out. A lot of people kind of forget the mental part. So that's where I come in. So for my puppies, I like to do meal training sessions. So most of their meals come from these training sessions that people do throughout the day. And most of the time, puppies have about a 10-minute attention span when they're little. So we'll do like 2 to 3 10-minute sessions where you literally use their food and train them to listen to you. And so they're working for their food. And this wears them out. And then they get their nap time and their play time and all of that. But you can also use stimulating stuff like puzzle feeding and Kongs and like snuffle mats and nose work and just anything that gets their brain engaged. People always forget that the brain is just as important. I do a lot of stuff with the nose because a lot of a dog's brain is their olfactory part, which as humans, we don't use that. So we don't think about that in training them. And if you can wear that out in a dog, you're usually pretty golden. So I tell people if you go for a walk, you can do half sniffs, half working, you know, a sniffari, as I like to call it. If you really want to like get them used to a new area, let them sniff it out. Good 30, 45-minute walk. Your dog will pass out afterward because they're using that olfactory sense in their brain. So mental stimulation as well as physical stimulation, making them work for their food, positive reinforcement. Dogs look to us for leadership. You know, I don't use the term alpha, I use the term leader. We're giving them the guidance. They want to work for us. They want to learn. It's also finding your dog's motivation. Some dogs are food, some dogs are toys, some dogs are love, and it's really just learning that. But most of the time I have found that they're food motivated, especially as puppies, so if we can start with that, then that's what we build on. If they're an older dog, and they like more toys, then we'll utilize toys and playing. Or if they're a love bug, like my dog is, then we'll reward her with love and affection. But it's really understanding your dog and where they come from and how best they learn.
So basically you're just playing off their instincts.
Playing off their instincts.
Like primed instincts.
What works best for them. Exactly.
So there's a lot of science to everything that you just broke down. Did you teach all of this yourself?
Kind of just research. I was always interested in behavioral modification, psychology. That was fun in college. I kind of brought it all together with dogs, watched a lot of other trainers and found what I liked, didn't like, what worked best for me, what I could agree with. And then, yeah, just kind of in the field, in the moment, learning that way. I'm constantly learning. There's never a day that goes by that I don't learn something new about a dog and how they learn, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. How did you recognize this need in your community?
There's always a need for dog training because everyone has a dog nowadays. And like I said, the pandemic kind of cleared out all the shelters, and so everyone was looking for a better way to have their dog at home with them and train. But I feel that also there should always be an availability in dog training, and also affordable. So I know a lot of people can't do training because they just can't afford it. I make sure that they're able to do that with me, so I work with them however need be to make sure that they can afford this dog training. So I think that's super important because there are no bad dogs with just improper training or lack of training. So making sure that everyone has this accessibility, I think, is truly, truly important.
Right. And it's good because you talked about accessibility. You're able to travel to location to visit people. But how far? I know you're located in Atlanta. What's the perimeter looking like as far as you'll travel?
Inside the perimeter, most of my clients are East Atlanta, like Midtown, Old Fourth Ward, Inman Park area. But I have done West Side and Buckhead and North Decatur and all of that.
Kind of just take it case by case.
Case by case, yeah. There have been a few cases where I've gone outside the perimeter, but usually it's just in the vicinity of Atlanta.
Okay, so we talked a lot about puppies and training, but what about older dogs that maybe have some bad habits? Do you work to break those?
Yes, and it really depends on the dog and the age of the dog and how long that's going to take. There's no quick fix for anything. Say a dog is barking out of a window at other dogs. Well, the quick fix would be close your blinds. But you also need to teach them that that window is no longer theirs. So you would have to teach them that every time they think they're going to bark at the window, you tell them leave it. Hopefully they understand that command if you've worked with me. If not, then we'll have to teach that command. If they don't listen, the negative consequence is that they are taken away from that window. The positive consequence would be if they did listen to you after saying leave it, they would get some sort of reward. So this is where that positive negative consequence comes into play. Say they're chewing up your shoes. One, immediate solution, don't leave your shoes out. So if they're constantly doing this, again, the negative consequence is they don't get any access to your shoes. Nothing should be left on the floor anyway, because a dog always assumes that everything on the floor is theirs. And we can try to teach this out of them, but it's also going to take a lot of the human intervention of don't leave stuff on the floor. The positive consequence, if you tell them leave it, they stop chewing on the shoe, they come to you, they get a treat. Cool. The dog just learned that if he makes the right choice, he gets a better reward. So that's making sure that we understand positive, negative consequence. Your dog is barking and you're yelling at them to stop. You're actually increasing the reason that they should be barking because all they hear is you barking along with them. And it's also really hard to teach people to ignore that. So that's that ignore the bad, reward the good. So if the dog is barking, you can teach them speak and quiet. Speak is when they bark on command. Quiet is when they're done barking. And that takes a bit of some time, especially with an older dog. But once they learn that, then if they're barking, you say quiet, and they stop, they get a reward. If they keep going, then you have to either take them away from what they're barking from, put them in a crate, let them settle down. There's always a positive and a negative consequence when it comes to breaking bad habits. And it has to be consistent. If one person in the house does it properly and one person in the house ignores the training completely, it's never going to work. So everyone in the house has to be involved in the training, and it has to be consistent.
That's interesting. I didn't actually think about that. Like, it's kind of a team effort, especially if you have like a family pet. So do you train families at a time, or do you typically work with like one? Okay, so families.
Oh, no, it's been a lot of families, a lot of parents with kids who got puppies for their kids. And so as long as the kid is willing, I like to bring the children in so they can understand how the training goes. And the parents' responsibility is to teach them when I'm not there that this is the homework we're going to do with the dog. You have to stay consistent with it. And most of the time, the kid is really engaged in learning about how their dog learns. And look what I made my puppy do. And like, we're learning together. And so yeah, families are a lot of fun, but it has to be consistent and everyone in the family has to do it.
Right, that's the key.
That's the key.
Have you ever worked with an animal or dog that made progress, but then you like went back and then they were back to chewing the shoes or barking at people?
Oh yeah. That was just lack of consistency, unfortunately. Dogs can regress. And if you don't keep it consistent, then they'll just move forward because they found like, oh, well, I can reward myself by chewing on the shoe now because nobody's disciplining me. I'm just going to keep on doing it.
Right.
And that's it.
So that's why you were talking about it goes to actually, you're kind of teaching the owners to teach their dogs more so.
Yeah, you have to be a leader. You have to tell the dog yes, no, and it has to stay consistent. That's the most, it really is the most important thing, for sure. And it's an everyday training for your dog about boundaries and what's theirs, what's yours, how are things going to go in this house. And unfortunately, people kind of stave off of it if they feel like their dog has gotten to a certain point, but there's always room for improvement, and you do have to keep refreshing, especially if the dog is picking up on those bad habits again. Like, for instance, mine started to not come when called right away. So guess what? We started doing a lot more recall training in the front yard, and now she's back to where she should be. So you never know. So it's always good to refresh and maintain and improve.
What's the future look like for Primed Instincts? Any big plans this year coming up?
Well, after baby. Yeah, probably just keep going what we've been doing so far and see if maybe we can build on that. You know, if I want to bring on another person, like maybe an intern, somebody who'd be interested in learning the ways of Primed Instincts, that would be fun. Maybe expanding outside the perimeter a little bit more. It is still just me, so.
Yeah. You seem so successful to have started a year ago, and you're already here. You're on Welcome Home Doggy already.
Welcome Home Doggy. Yeah, so far so good. So we can kind of just like steadily increase and keep the clients happy. Like I said, it's been a lot of referrals, so keeping those coming would be great. And working with other trainers in the Atlanta area. So if one of us has a dog that they just don't specialize in, then we can refer out and kind of bonding in that community that way. And then maybe we all can figure out some fun business venture to do together. I don't know. Be interesting.
You can start doing Zoom classes and everything.
I do Zoom classes. I've worked with people in Seattle, LA, Chicago. Yeah, that's been a new thing for training because of the pandemic, but it's worked out. So,
what do the classes look like?
For the puppy basics?
For Zoom.
Oh, for Zoom? Yeah, so it's a puppy basics or house manners basics if the dog is over a year. That's usually those newly rescued dogs. But it's the same course that I would do with a client that I see in person. I show them the commands I want them to do with my personal dog, and then they show me them doing it with their dog. It's usually a lot shorter than an hour long, and they have to do a little bit more homework, but it's basically the same. And we do every consecutive week as much as we can. For the house manners, it's usually not always going to be 4 lessons because each older dog is different. Like I said, breaking that behavior down. So if we have to go into 5, 6 lessons, that's fine.
Okay.
It just depends on how much the dog can take in.
Well, you've got so much success so far, and there's so much more to go, but we're wishing you all the best and everything that's to come. So people are going to see this. They're going to be like, either A, I want to train with her, or B, how do I join her team? So how can people get in contact with you? Sure.
So I have an Instagram at Primed Instincts. I post a lot of puppy pictures on there, so you need to go there to check it out if you want some puppy fulfillments. And then I also have a Facebook, and I have a website. So www.primedinstincts.com. There you'll see all my services that I do. You'll also see my consultation form you can fill out. That gets sent straight to my email. And then I will send you another email to follow up with a phone consultation. We'll go over you, your dog, your issues, what sort of training you're looking for, and then I'll tell you about a lesson outline that I think would be best for you and your dog.
Okay. Well, be on the lookout for a message from me. I've got a 13-year-old Yorkie. Maybe he's a lost cause. I don't know, but I guess we'll figure that out.
Never.
Well, thank you for being here, Megan.
Thank you.
Remember to follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and visit our website and watch us on YouTube. I'm Arianna Lasha, and this is Welcome Home Doggy.